How's it going, Starlings? Welcome back to a brand new Stargirl breakdown and review. Now, this is for episode 12, titled Stars and Stripe Part 1. Literally the penultimate episode. We have only got one more episode left. And did anyone feel like this episode just flew past? I mean, I know the cliches, like time flies by when you're having fun, but the pacing of this episode was really just launched into oblivion. It was in a good way. It just felt very seamless. There was a lot of action at the beginning, a lot of stuff going down. Obviously, the Project New America plan is in full spin with Brainwave sending out those, well, brainwaves in that Cerebro-like room. This episode was just great. A lot of people were saying it's like their new favorite episode. For me, this still doesn't beat episode 10, but it was still probably for me the second best episode. Like, it was just fantastic. So let's get into this. But before we do, everyone, if you have 2 seconds of your time to click that thumbs up button, I would really appreciate it. And also, if you're a Doom Patrol fan, I do have an interview up on the channel now with Doom Patrol Season 2's Dorothy Spinner, Abigail Shapiro. It was a great time speaking to her. But other than that, hey, let's talk about episode 12, Stars and Stripe Part 1. So just like at the end of the last episode, we have a countdown, and now there's 11 hours and 35 minutes until Project New America really begins. And this is interesting as well, because I think a lot of people thought that Brainwave was going to be, and myself included, going to go over to Barbara's house, Courtney's house, and try and kill them, but he actually just gave the orders out to Sportsmaster and Tigress, who were responsible for taking him out. But what this gave us for the beginning of the episode was once again a very cool beginning with really great choreography. I am a really big fan of Stargirl's fight scenes. It's honestly, I really do feel like it's the best we've seen on DC TV in years. Like, not every minuscule moment of it is absolutely perfect, but I would say just the way they approach everything, the camera angles, like, for sure, you can tell sometimes when Tigress jumps, it might be a bit slow, or you could feel like maybe some wire work is put into it. Like, obviously, that is how it works, but I just feel like the way this is done is so masterfully executed. It really does lend to a lot of cinematic moments, just little beats, like when the staff catches Barbara, or Courtney just sends the staff last second to, like, stop something that Tigress is doing. It's just these tiny little bits that they didn't have to include, but really do add that much more onto a fight scene. But before I get way too ahead of myself, was it just me, or did Jordan still kind of seem conflicted in this episode? I don't want to put all my cards on that just yet. I think he's just, what this is he feels disturbed about letting Barbara and her family die, because he evidently has feelings for her. He obviously came to the point where he's ready to let her go, but I think it's just still disturbing. For example, in that first scene when Brainwave was just saying how there's going to be a broadcast and Gambler will trigger a blackout across the USA, blinding the Pentagon, but once that's done and he's reprogrammed people's minds, they'll think like them, fight like them if needed, and yeah, just Jordan's just sat there like, oh, do I really want to do this? But no, I think he does. But yeah, there's a little bit more to it now for him. But another thing about those fight scenes, of course, we had Pat versus Sportsmaster, and this was just brilliant. And one thing I'm actually quite disappointed about, to be honest, that is the right word, because, you know, us DC Universe subscribers, we're meant to be getting usually this extra footage. And, you know, in my interview with J. Austin Walker, who plays Brainwave Jr., he did confirm to us that each episode has, you know, a certain amount of footage cut off, whether that's several minutes to 12 minutes. Usually, like the first couple of episodes of DC Universe's Stargirl, they were 50-something minutes, but it's like after that, they're all 42, 43, 41 minutes. But on DC Universe, we should still be getting that extra footage, and CW should obviously, because of the ads on their network slot, have the 40, 42. And you may be thinking, like, why are you bringing this up? It's because there is some scenes between Pat and Crusher, or should I say Sportsmaster, like where he, for example, offered him a place to stay when he got kicked out of Barbara. I mean, all of these things, imagine how cool that would have been to see. So it just seems that the CW deal between DC Universe, you know, dropping Stargirl and giving it to them was inked out a long time ago, and for some reason that affected them being able to show the longer episodes, which they should have still been able to do because it's a streaming service. There was literally no bad consequence really to allowing that extra footage in the episodes of Stargirl on DC Universe, unless it really does just chop up the episode in such an unnatural way. That's the only reason why they would still decide to cut it out, but I think the reason why we're still not getting this extra footage on DC Universe is just really, because of the whole CW deal, and they just decided to scrap it and make every episode like the CW ones. But moving onwards, the fights, bouncing between Pat and Sportsmaster, Courtney and Tigress, and Barbara just running for her life was just brilliant. This was such a fantastic beginning to the episode. I love that moment when Sportsmaster just bounced his baseball bat behind his back. That was just little things like this. I really do appreciate it. But thankfully, Mike saves his father by drilling Sportsmaster in the back. And this is when he finally in this episode, really, there wasn't a whole bunch of time dedicated to it because we had a lot of moving pieces this episode. But there was that one scene later, which we'll get to. But yeah, Mike literally sees what his father has built, and that is his robot S.T.R.I.P.E. And I was like, finally, Mike has been let in on the fold. There's no really secrets between anyone now. And this is just going to make things very, very interesting moving forward. I know lots of people think that maybe he'll get another JSA artifact. I mean, personally, I really don't think so. At least not straight away. I think the pen will be reserved for another character. That's if they, again, my answer to adding new heroes to the show is don't forget, it's moving to the CW now. If you add another hero who's got a JSA artifact, let's say the pen, the Thunderbolt pen, then you've got loads more effects to deal with, another actor to pay on top of the already cast that's established. Like, you really need to think about all those things and what they're realistically going to do. Maybe you can get another character having and wielding another JSA artifact, but they might not be a regular in the show. We had that scene with Icicle's parents saying that obviously Barbara wouldn't have been a suitable wife anyway, just kind of forget her. But they were also going on about telling Cameron, Icicle's son, about everything. He's old enough to learn about the plan. But, this kind of led me to a larger point. Not going to go on about this for too long, really. Just that, does anyone feel like, and I'm sure this is the case, that Cameron scenes are missing? Like, Cameron seems to be, or should I say Hunter Sandstone, if that's how you say the actor's name, quite a proficient actor. I feel like he has a lot to give. But we haven't really seen anything from him this season, and I feel like maybe those scenes are cut out from what I was mentioning earlier, and I think that's a shame. I'm not saying he had a huge role to play in this season from the script or anything, or the scripts or the scenes that we haven't seen. I just feel like there's been some things missing, and hopefully we do get to see more from him, and this scene just reminded me of how much we haven't seen him with Icicle's parents, just trying to bring Cameron in on the whole evil Injustice Society of America. Just big plan and scheme. But this is when she brings Anya Bowen, the new fiddler, because Sportsmaster and Tigress just can't do their jobs. We had that cool little scene with her and her son just kind of giving more character to her husband, the original fiddler. But that's when we got that scene between Sportsmaster and Tigress where they were just kind of recovering. He was kind of bitching about Mike for drilling him in the back. And this is when Anya Bowen arrives so that they don't fail a second time. She discusses very briefly what they can do, like Anya Bowen will immobilize them with the fiddler skills, making them still and impossible to miss for Sportsmaster and Tigress. But this is when things kind of went a little bit kind of to the left, because she says that they get too much pleasure from doing this kind of thing, Sportsmaster and Tigress. I mean, they just love, like, we saw that earlier in the fights, they really do kind of get off on that. They're kind of sadistic, and she wonders how Artemis Croc is going to turn out, and that's likely to be a monster like her mother, which is when Tigress sends out a crossbow bolt, or dart, whatever you want to call it, and did that kill her? Like, is that it? I mean, there's no confirmation, but it's kind of hard to know. Like, did she die? Or did she just kind of get, I don't know, tranked out on the floor with a crossbow bolt? I mean, don't get me wrong, you guys have heard me say this quite a few times. I love these villainous squabbles, it's unlike the Justice League. Sure, they have their problems from time to time, but when villains go head to head, they have quite a lot of ego, quite a lot of selfishness. It's kind of like the dark side. Sith rely on their passion for their strength. This is getting too nerdy, but it's kind of like villains, often they clash. So when you think of making a villainous organization, you better damn have everyone in line, because it can go wrong very, very quickly. But I just feel like if this really is the end for Anya Bowen's character, it's a shame, because we haven't really seen a whole bunch of her yet again. Just like how we know there's many scenes cut out, like the Sportsmaster moment when he invited Pat to stay around his house. Imagine how many more scenes there are like that, give or take 8 to 12 minutes out of each episode we've got thus far on DC Universe. So if this really is it for her, let's just assume it is. That would suck for me personally, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Now, at this point, we had the new JSA kind of rendezvous at that kind of camping bunker or cabin, whatever you want to call it. Justin arrives, S.T.R.I.P.E arrives. This was all a really cool moment. As I said, everything feels like it's flying by in this episode because there's so much to get through in this two-parter. But we also had Brainwave in the Dragon King lair. Cindy, I love this moment between Cindy. Yet again, villains with villains. Even though Cindy's kind of like a legacy villain, if you will, I love this moment because, you know, they both have a bit of resentment for each other in one kind of way or another. For example, Cindy asks Brainwave when he was wondering around if Stargirl is dead, but that's when he says that she had a job watching his son for any signs of abilities developing, and if he had known that his telepathic powers are emerging, that he may have been able to help him, and he would have done anything to help him. Instead, he had to end him because of him, which is when Cindy just teases him in her comeback, saying, well, if you weren't in your coma in a hospital, then maybe something could have been done. But that is when he doubles up with another burn, saying that Dragon King thinks that Cindy is a failed experiment, and he would know that because he can read his mind. And why would he lie about that? So it is very interesting to think that that really probably is the truth, that Dragon King does think of Cindy as a complete failed experiment, and the Injustice Society of America and all of their members echo that sentiment as well. But yeah, Brainwave just saying, you know, I would have been able to help him. I would have done anything to help him. Instead, you had to end him. No. You could have just still helped him. You didn't have to kill him. But I'm still hoping that Henry somehow, despite Jake Austin Walker saying that he did die, it doesn't mean that just like as we know, Brainwave has absorbed the power from Henry, like this essence came out of him. Well, I'm just choosing to think that there is a backup storyline here, that due to now we know it's confirmed that he did absorb something from Brainwave Jr., that could have also included his consciousness that is maybe suppressed in Brainwave, you know, Senior's, or should I say Henry King himself's subconscious somewhere. So, you know, I'm just saying, even though it does seem for now that he is dead, they could always write that in. And I believe that is not too unfamiliar from the comics book storyline as well, even though I believe it was flipped the other way around. But anyway, Brainwave goes with Dragon King for the test in their own little makeshift kind of knockoff Cerebro. Like, I hate to be that guy, but it is. I mean, who cares at the end of the day? This was still so awesome. He does warn him that this is either going to work or every cell in his prefrontal cortex is going to melt and his spinal cord will turn into slush. That doesn't seem to bother him. It does make me wonder if what would have happened if they used Brainwave Jr. Would he have been powerful enough, like his father, to have overcome those potential consequences? Maybe not. Then again, Brainwave himself might not have been powerful enough beforehand, before he absorbed his son's powers as well. So there's that side as well. But anyway, the machine, it was zapping Brainwave. Love all of these effects. He's hearing voices of millions across the country screaming in pain, wretched thoughts and ugly truths. He reckons it's gonna work. And this is what I mean, guys, just, you know, taking a step back from just recapping there, like all of this so far in the episode is really, really engaging. Like everything has really come to a good full circle in this storyline. This is just how a penultimate episode should feel. The villains, seemingly at this point in the story, look like they're gonna succeed. Like, how could they be stopped? Everything is going according to plan. It just really does feel like a great arc coming to fruition, yet you still know that there's a chance and still a great battle ahead between the new JSA and the Injustice Society of America. I just really am enjoying where things are at this season and how everything has gone. I also believe in my last review I did say that I wanted to see Yolanda deal with Henry's death more, and I'm glad we kind of did see something like that when we had Beth asking Yolanda if she's thinking about Henry. She says no, but Chuck does detect a lie. I loved all of these kind of scenes, and we had Rick at the same time trying to decode his father's journal. That finally came to a good peak this episode after all of that long season investigation into it. Justin asks about it. I was thinking that maybe he would be able to offer something, but no, it did just turn out to be a little bit of a joke, and that he feels like cleaning the bathroom for some reason or another. Of course, that just comes from his janitor cravings, I'm sure. I also really like that scene between Mike and Courtney. I mean, it's great having him in on the fold now, and if you guys remember, I was actually speculating, especially after the end of last episode when Isuka was like, hey, we can't leave a legacy running around. I was adding that into how disregarded Mike had been this season, and it might have been a very big double whammy losing another character, especially one who's been just pushed away unfairly so a lot of times. I know he's a kid. I know you just kind of want to protect him, but sometimes there was some outbursts and you just kind of felt sorry for Mike. But now he is in on the fold of just the whole JSA hero business. I've learned a lot more away from the whole Mike dying thing, even though that could still happen next episode. I'm just going to say it won't, but, you know, it is still a possibility one day. But I also still do feel sorry for him, because even though he's in on all of this now, for example, that line from Mike when he says, you know, you're so lucky the staff picked you. I mean, then he wonders if he would have found it first, maybe it would have picked him. And he's not salty in this moment. He's smiling, but there's also a little bit of bittersweetness there. And yet again, as I said, I know he's in on the fold and everything is out in the open, but still, he was kind of pushed aside all season long, and I know he is younger, but you kind of just do see this innocence in him. There's nothing particularly wrong with him at all, and he didn't get to be the one to have some kind of impressionable, heroic moment, like, or become a member of the JSA. I mean, imagine how left out you would feel, for example, if you realized all of this has been happening, new JSA members have been recruited, that could have been you, at least one of the characters maybe. But no, everyone else is having that, you know, heroic role but you. So I do feel for Mike there, because, I don't know, maybe I'm projecting into how I would feel if I was him. But yeah, I did love that line of where he says, you know, my dad doesn't have any special powers either, but he's still built S.T.R.I.P.E, you know. Maybe one day I could do something like that for the JSA. Yeah, that was a very wholesome ending to that scene. We had Rick getting very triggered. I did like this scene, but I had a bit of an issue with it, because I just felt, I wrote down on my bullet point, like, it doesn't take a genius. Out of all of the things he was thinking about, I felt like one of the numbers, because he was trying to think of things obviously that would be kind of key to his father, so he thought of stuff to do with Our Man, like 60 Minutes, or just relevant things like that, right? But the one obvious thing, the one sincere thing he didn't think about being the 1966 Mustang, but also how that was meant to be a big, you know, close thing to Rick's character, the one semblance of, you know, thing that he wanted to maintain, even though he didn't have a relationship with his father growing up because he died. He did still try and, you know, make his own 66 Mustang come to fruition, yet he didn't think of the 1966. I don't know, maybe you could look at how I'm maybe nitpicking here. I don't want to, you know, put this as across as any major flack or anything. It's just, I feel like out of all the examples he gave in that scene and how he was brainstorming, that Rick Tyler would have thought of 1966 being it's one of the first things I thought about before this whole scene even really began. Like when he just started speaking about it, I was like, oh yeah, but what about the car? I loved seeing how once all of this was figured out, we got the formulas for the coordinates of the map and of the tunnels, you know, and how, you know, we had Our Man going down there in the past and how he must have scoped it all out. Essentially just formulate this whole plan to try and take the whole ISA threat down. And the funny thing about Mike in this moment, you know, he gets the most important job of all, looking after the dog. It really does make me feel like father, like son, you know, S.T.R.I.P.E or S.T.R.I.P.E, way back even into the days of the Star-Spangled Kid. He's always been joked about. He was the guy holding the camera, taking the picture of the JSA. He wasn't recognized in the 7 Soldiers of Victory, for example, because there was 8 of them in that photo. And it's kind of the same thing for Mike. He's looking after the dog. Like, even though he was integral, because you always need the squire, if you will, to a hero who is not really, you know, in the legend or the tales, but they did lots of things. I always like stories where, you know, they actually incorporate how much of an important role that character did play, but were never recorded in whatever said legend I'm referring to. And I feel like that is the character of Pat Dugan and also Mike. And it does seem that Mike is going in his father's footsteps. And lastly, guys, it feels like I should have more to say, but this episode, as I said, felt very seamless in terms of like a sequence of events. That Stargirl and S.T.R.I.P.E running to the tunnel entrance scene was just wicked. I loved it. We had Beth and Barbara going to her workplace, kind of hacking in. We had Rick and Justin and Wildcat go to the other tunnel entrance. And that's when, you know, after the hacking, they find out about the new constitution and how they want to force people to embrace solar and wind power, eliminate discrimination over race, religion, sexual orientation, universal healthcare. This all sounds great. Like, so they're like, are you sure? we're not on the right side. But the thing is, the messed up thing about all of this is, even though they're fantastic goals you would want any country and people to believe in, universal healthcare, and there's no discrimination anymore. Everyone just thinks this way. There is no race discrimination. It's just all fantastic that way. But they're perfectly willing to accept that 25 million people may die, because that's 25% of their target audience that will be affected if they resist too much, because they've already calculated that some people will try and fight too hard against Brainwave's reprogramming process, and if that happens, they will die. We also found out that the broadcast actually begins at the 30-minute mark, as in 30 minutes until it's finished. So this is when Barbara is affected, Justin. We also have Pat affected by all of it, and he's in the S.T.R.I.P.E robot. So yeah, the last scene was him just swinging, and then like literally cut to credits with no music. So yeah, that's going to be very interesting. We know we have a big fight in the ISA headquarters next episode, and we've seen that from some trailers, just very, very short, brief footage kind of teasing it. So it's going to be a really awesome head-to-head battle. One of them is going to have to get to Brainwave to disable all of this, surely. I think it would be so awesome if somehow Henry's consciousness was still in Brainwave and like he was trying to fight back, but I think they're not going to do that. That could be reserved for a future storyline if they want to keep Brainwave Jr.'s consciousness dormant, should I say. But overall, this was a fantastic episode. Definitely not my favorite. I mean, I think people may be quick to say that. Fair enough if that is the case, because it was a very seamless, quick action, very enjoyable and engaging episode. But for me, nothing really beats the episode 10 performance of Brainwave Jr. It was very emotional. I think that's what really got me. There was a lot of action in that as well. But I really do feel that this part 1 of the two-parter finale should be really telling of how awesome next episode is going to be, closing the season 1 as a whole. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, guys. Remember to leave a like just to show your support for the channel, but also just, for Stargirl as well. I read every single one of your comments, so make sure you are leaving them. And also, maybe if you want to talk to me about this personally, you might want to join the Discord server, which should be in the top pinned comment down below, as well as my merch store as well, guys. I'm really happy well, it's not really an announcement, and I don't know how many people will make it to the end of this video, but I have some actual Boba baseball caps now. I had to kind of re-simplify the design. I've got an amazing artist who helped me out with that, known as Smart Sheep. Due to embroidery and stitching of hats, it's a bit different in terms of just printing my normal logo on a hoodie or something. So yeah, the design's a lot simpler, but I'm very, very happy with it. Maybe you guys could check that out. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and let's all get pumped for the Stargirl Season 1 finale coming out just next week.